Well, it's when my family member went over a while ago to take it all to the paint, we brought it all back again. But they only open on Thursday.
Right, welcome back. Just to, I suppose it's a politically administrative job. Councillor Court raised an issue, and now I have to ask either Councillor Martin and Councillor Pravanov. I'm aware that your names were included in the protected disclosure question that went out to the AG's office on this project. It is my intention to raise this matter with you in terms of the conflict of interest, so that you're protected from walking into something which may be not pleasant for yourself in terms of process. So, but the onus actually lies with you to declare whether you have a conflict of interest or not. Councillor Martin, since you're about to ask a question, you might want to respond first.
Your Worship, I don't believe there's a conflict. Point of order around standing on a 19 point, non-financial conflicts of interest. No, I don't believe there is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not believe I have a conflict of interest either. I flagged my request to speak because I have a question, which I will ask now. So thank you, Tom, very much for going through today in detail your report. So my question is around engagement. So, and there's a sort of a long line and a long timeline over which this process of the gateway developed, and one was where I think you said earlier on for a gateway to the island, it was actually quite widely, the community was quite widely engaged upon, whereas when it turned into a district-wide gateway, that became much more limited. And I'm just wondering, and so the engagement, my understanding is that it was actually confined to probably more Paparamu Beach rather than the whole district. And I'm just wondering, as a learning there about the pros and cons of including a whole district versus the area that something is being built in, because it has implications for ratepayers at the whole district.
I think, Councillor, thank you for that. Yes, there is a lesson there, and it's really just being aware of how the concept, if you like, has evolved, and then the different interests that there would be, and making sure that those interests are therefore either communicated with or brought into where there was a need for consultation. The sense we got from some was that they hadn't realised that the concept had changed from being a Kāpiti Island focused to a broader. And so one of the criticisms and one of the stories they had in their heads was, why isn't this providing benefit to the whole region? Why isn't this providing benefit to the whole district? In actual fact, in the concepts that were evolving, that was very much the intent. So two sides to that, being aware of what people know and don't know, or making sure that what is known is made transparent.
Thank you.
Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Look, Tom, and I was actually just going to ask a very similar question to Councillor Pravanov, but in relation to the gateway starting off, or DLD starting off as a gateway to Kāpiti Island through the McCain Park plan, look, it has ended up being a gateway to Kāpiti, and I think it's sort of it's something else, but that has led to confusion, or do you think that has led to confusion?
Only where people don't understand that that's been the concept, which is why in the report spent some time in just documenting that evolution so people could actually see how it had actually changed.
I guess leading into that, you talk to different people using different truths, and it's been alluded to around misinformation. Is it misinformation, or is it more of a response to a lack of information?
Probably hard for me to make a judgment call on that. I would say largely a response to lack of information, but we did hear some people saying that there was information there. The scope of the review and the time didn't have time to sort of go in and dig out the specifics of that information, but there were certainly misunderstandings there. Now, whether they were willfully communicated or whether they were just because that's what people knew and that was their truth, it's hard to say.
Fair enough. You talked to the allocation of resources to a project or the moving around of resources. Just confirming, you would consider that a managerial responsibility?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. There doesn't seem to be any more questions. Thank you, Tom, for a rigorous exchange with the elected members.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillors. And it's been a pleasure to be involved in the project.
Very good.
Kia ora.
Now we come to page 10, recommendations. Somebody move. Councillor Holbrow, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Right of intro.
I think we've said everything that needs to be said. Mr. Gott and his company have already been thanked. I think there are a lot of learnings from this that, as I said, are already being implemented in the organisation. I think it's a very thorough and balanced report, and yeah, certainly a lot to learn. Thank you.
Councillor Coates.
Given the question or comments from the member of the public this morning, I can say that I'm personally, as a councillor, happy with the detail of the report, and I guess what the public don't see is the interrogation that goes on behind that through briefings and again today with Mr. Gott presenting the report. On a personal level, I want to make a comment around the misinformation and the I guess the lack of comms that was referred to in the report, to say that as a councillor that was challenging. There are times, like Councillor Holbrow has indicated, that you want to engage in the discussion to help inform the public that are being misled. And that is, I think, as the Chief Executive has indicated, at times an unsafe environment, both for elected members and for staff. And my concern and hope out of this review is that we can look to do better in this area around providing that constant beat of information I think Tom referred to moving forward. And I refer to the more recent representation review, where once again misinformation was out there through the rep review, and elected members were trying to engage online, which the public expect of us. And so forth. So I think there is a hard discussion that we need to have as a table in terms of how we communicate, and also with the Chief Executive in terms of how we work with the organisation around providing that constant beat of information when we are tackling not just capital projects, but also projects like the rep review and so forth. So that's it from me. I hope that this helps us in the community move forward. I know there are some in the community that no matter what we say or do will hold a different view, but the review from Martin Jenkins certainly gives some credence to the process that we have undertaken.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to acknowledge the thoughtful report from Martin Jenkins. I also want to acknowledge the incredible pressures as the CE and the report states that we're on staff at a really momentous time in New Zealand with COVID. And I also want to ensure that we don't lose sight that staff are also dealing with incredibly poor behaviour from some members of our community. That aside, we still need to, and I think the report is quite clear about that, we need to acknowledge some of the review findings. And specifically for me, that's about making sure that the leadership issues that cropped up in this project don't occur, and it's quite clear from Council's approach to project management that we've got something in place that could ensure that kind of lack of leadership doesn't occur again. But when it comes to communication, I do think we're at an impasse. The CE stated in answer to one of the questions today, it's not to say I would do a different thing in the future. I may have slightly misquoted him, but that doesn't give me confidence that we are all heading in the same direction here. And so I again implore you, Mr. Mayor, that we need as a council to have a council staff and council law discussion about how we can engage with the community and keep engaged. And I do acknowledge the concerns for staff safety and well-being, having to read some of the comments, but I think it's an issue that we haven't found a solution to yet, and I think that discussion has to occur. Thank you.
Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Look, I'm not going to rehash things again, but I would like to make some points. I've made no bones about being disappointed in the process that we've been through. I note the non-engagement with regards to the local advisory group, and I do note the word local. I do not think management has had a finger on the pulse of things in regards to this, especially considering the high level of community interests in the expressed views and sentiments. I stated in the past around reputational damage, and I believe there has been a reputational damage in this case. Look, I just wanted to note I embrace the involvement late in the project and acknowledge the significance of the name gifting of Te Urahi and the ongoing relationship in this space, but also acknowledge the lack of local mana whenua and Kaitiaki positive engagement in the early stages of this project, and I'm referring to about 2019 and 2020. I note that the TRC final report was not formally received by Council. I stand to be corrected on that, but that's my view on that. I have a high expectation in the lessons learnt here for future projects. Lastly, and from my perspective, I would like to push back against Mr. Maxwell's comment that the main source of unrest was from councillors not a part of an earlier process and not being knowledgeable in this space. And just informing, I will also be abstaining from the vote today.
Right. Right of reply.
Yeah, I'd like to talk on some of Councillor McCann's comments and Councillor Coots's comments about what they've raised around engagement. No criticism of the way staff have been engaging, but I'd like to also acknowledge what the report says about health and safety of staff engaging online and how significant that is here and across the country. Staff are regularly abused online at a level which is completely unacceptable, and they have no right to reply. And I think that really needs to be acknowledged and at the forefront of any discussions that we have around staff on social media. I just want to impress how significant that issue is. And we cop it as elected members too sometimes, but as I said, you know, we can get on there and defend ourselves, and staff can't even do that. So I just want to flag that as we go into any discussions about future communications. I acknowledge some of the things that Councillor Halliday has said. I think some of them are out of scope of this review, particularly identifying mandated iwi representatives, which is kind of not our role as council. It's an internal role. So, having said that, I think there's a lot of positive to come out of this review, and there are achievements that were acknowledged as well. And we've talked about today what a significant effort it was to get that funding from central government. It didn't just fall into our lap. It took a significant amount of work by council staff. So I just think that needs to be acknowledged. And also that gifting of the name Te Urahi and that partnership that's still going on with the project management group with iwi. So I hope we can now note the findings of this review, act on them, and as I've said, we have already acted on some of them, and turn this into a really positive project for our community. So I encourage you all to accept this review and look forward to the work that comes out of it in the future.
Right, thank you very much. Recommendation 49, 1 to 5, moved by Councillor Holbrook, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Councillor Martin?
I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining.
Thank you.
Same too.
Councillor Pravnov, you've abstained?
Yes.
Carried. Right, item number 8.2, Wellington Regional Leadership Committee Update Agreement, page 33. Jennifer.
Kia ora tātou katoa. As this is largely an administrative paper, I would like to take the report as read and invite questions through the chair.
Questions? No questions? That's long. Right.
I'd just like to ask a question, if I may.
Oh, too slow.
So it's more a general question. So I'm looking at paragraph 25 on page 35, and 25.1, formally invite a small number of members of Parliament to attend joint committee meetings who can speak in public comment and be asked to speak on a topic. Will other non-committee members be welcome to speak in public comment at the meetings of this committee?
I suppose it's through observers, right? And they've widened the definition of that.
I believe so. Natasha, did you have a comment on that one?
Yeah, so I'm looking at 25.1, where a small number of members of Parliament can attend the joint committee meetings and speak in public comment. Will that invitation be extended to other non-committee members? I'm just noting that it's described as public.
Yeah, look, I'd have to look into that and we can come back to you with some clarification on that. I'd have to look at the full terms of reference, which are reasonably lengthy, just to see what other provision there was for that. So sorry, I don't quite have the answer at hand. Thank you.
But
the short and logical answer is yes, they could. I was in the discussion that occurred, and it was simply about the fact that local MPs don't have a role on the committee, but the mayors and iwi members of the forum would be really keen to encourage their attendance to start to understand the detail of the issues. So absolutely, if, for example, other elected members wanted to attend, they could have the same opportunity. I doubt they'll be getting regular invites other than being advised that there is a meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Coates.
Just referring to point number 4 in the report, I appreciate that the Joint Committee is looking at economic development and recovery as well as the regional growth framework. Given the announcement yesterday around the three waters and the announcement previously around the uplifting, the national policy statement around urban development and all of that stuff, and whatever else is going to be thrown at us over the next 12 months, what likelihood it is of those topics to be discussed in this forum as well?
Very highly likely.
It's my observation that this committee is on a journey of discovery about the business of councils.
It is.
And so given that, and given that we in some ways have lost our local voice, how is our community's voice heard on that? Is it simply through His Worship the Mayor attending that?
And in the background, you also have the chief executives working together.
Yeah. I say, given these are really big topics, I'm not opposed to this, just to be really clear, but I'm just wondering, you know, in terms of these topics that I've referred to haven't been mentioned in here, but when you look at it as a regional committee around leadership, admittedly around economic development and growth framework, you could argue that Three Waters fits in there, but...
I know my comment was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I'm actually slightly concerned and encouraged both with the fact that this committee is taking an interest in everything of significance. Three Waters, I suspect they won't, for pretty obvious reasons. But every other issue, they have certainly asked for workshops and ability to consider what their role is. Just to flesh out what the Mayor has said is there are 3 levels of participation in this, which is why I'm both concerned and encouraged because of the workloads. But Natasha represents us at a working group, and then there's a CE's forum that follows, and then there's the full committee that follows. So current discussions are about whether there is a way to simplify the range of meetings that those 3 groups are participating in at the moment. So that's a live discussion as well. My final observation, just because it's been a week of it, is that the 2 ministers that were appointed to this group by virtue of their roles have attended for about half an hour of one meeting.
For the photograph.
And that's already been called out by some mayors, that the whole point of this was for key cabinet members to be a participant in these processes, and they have already said we're too busy for you.
Thanks for bringing that to mind.
Councillor Elliott.
Thanks. Yep, the CE's just mainly answered my question, because I was going to add into that the Zone 4 meetings at Mirror Forum and Climate Committee and other regional workshops and committees. It's a huge workload for everyone. Thank you.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So just picking up on that earlier point about public attendance at these. So just having a quick look through, my understanding is that these meetings are effectively treated, because Greater Wellington's the administrating local authority for them, if I'm correct. So they're conducted effectively as one of their committees, and you've got the same right of public access and presumably the same Lagoima requirements will apply under that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? If not, can somebody move recommendation 36 to 40? Councillor Buswell, mover. Councillor Holbrook, seconder. Right of intro, waived. Debate, no. Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, look, just on debate, the CE has raised some concerns, and I've got the same concerns, and I don't know why I should be supporting this unless we've got answers that you asked, about the actual role of this committee. I'm struggling with that, and I probably won't support it on the basis that I'd like further information.
Further information on what?
The actual specific role that this one carries out, that's not doubling up on other committees' work, other regional committee work.
Well, this is a central platform interfacing local councils and the government. This is found to be effective in other areas. I think the Waikato, they've got one of those structures. But as the Chief Executive said, the engagement of the 2 ministers has been somewhat not as encouraging, but that doesn't mean that they will not feel the heat.
Okay. All right, well, on that basis, I'm prepared to give it a trial for 3 months, but then I can can it if it doesn't work. Thanks.
I take that you fired a massive shot across the bow of the government.
90-day trial.
I can feel the beehive shaking now.
I just want to
Councillor
note I'm
McCann.
I'm opposed to 90-day trials.
Okay, moving along. Recommendation 36 to 40 moved by Councillor Buswell, seconded by Councillor Holbrook. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Item 8.3, Beach Bylaw 2021, technical amendments. Hamish, you're straight into it now.
Morena, everybody. This morning I've come to talk to you about some technical amendments to the beach bylaw that was passed earlier in March this year. We're proposing a number of minor amendments that have been identified through the work that's been underway to help implement the bylaw earlier this year. In particular, we've identified through some of the details and working through our infringement processes a need to add some level of specificity to the schedules we're using under the initial legislation that we referred to, and also to address some formatting, numbering, sequencing numbers in the bylaw itself. But otherwise, take the report as read and welcome any questions.
Thank you. Can I ask, I understand that since we passed this bylaw, the police have issued one or two tickets. This does not invalidate those?
I can't comment on, I'm not aware of.
We're just summoning up a response.
He's responsible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would be interested to receive details of those two matters so that we could make inquiries in relation to that.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Kathy Spies, or Councillor, I say.
Oh, thank you very much.
The amount of noise you make around here makes me think you are.
I don't have to wait till next year.
Or you could go back to the past.
Kia ora, Hamish, thank you so much. This isn't specifically to the report, but more on the beach bylaw. And just wondering, do staff know as yet when you'll be engaging with the boating clubs and the Manly Street North residents around either barriers or cameras, as the community board would like to be engaged with this process as well?
Just waiting to go red again. Through you, parts of that work alongside Jackie, and you may be aware that through the restructure in place, we're short on a few staff, but I understand that work is scheduled and will take place into next year, so not for the summer period. I think that was always the timeline proposed anyway. Yep.
Right. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think mine's just more a technicality sort of thing. But on number 8, page 37 refers to correcting the numbering of the clauses, but the last part of that paragraph says this includes removing duplicate clauses 1.4 and 16.2. But I note they're actually not duplicated clauses. I could be wrong on this. They're more than likely just a numbering. They are actually just a numbering issue rather than a duplication issue.
Correct. Sorry. Yes.
Okay,
you're right. It's numbering only, not duplicate clauses, but duplicate numbering of clauses. Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Coates.
I note the paper isn't specifically around the actions that resulted from the beach review, just going back to Kathy's question, but given that Kathy asked the question and that it was answered, could Council have an update in terms of the follow-up actions, the operational measures, sometime early next year before those are implemented, just so that we're up to speed and aware of what's going to happen before it happens, and so forth, or just when staff see appropriate? I thought this year's probably too early and too much pressure.
I think Mr. Jefferson is shaking his head.
Great. Thank you.
A steady beat of information. Nobody else? Can somebody move recommendation 26? Councillor Elliott, Councillor James Coates. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, 8.4, draft calendar meetings for next year. Tanika.
That'll be me.
That'll be you.
Kia ora koutou, through you, Mr Mayor. I bring to you the draft calendar of meetings for 2022. I will largely take the paper and calendar attached as read, but we'll just note that the only significant area in which this calendar deviates from the approach that has been in place this year is the reduction in the number of strategy and operations meetings proposed for the year. This reflects, I guess, it's in recognition of the significant workload that councillors are facing outside of meetings at the moment. So to try and allow more time for that outside of meeting workload, we are proposing to reduce the number of strategy and operations committee meetings to 1 per month, but of course can add additional meetings into the calendar should more frequent meetings be needed at any point. And other than that, I can take the paper as read.
Questions? Councillor Holbrook.
So presumably we'll be allocating more time to each of those strategy and operations committee meetings and not scheduling briefings at, say, 1:30?
We can certainly take that feedback away, but yes, that would be my expectation. Yeah, there was a question mark. I heard it. Yes.
Councillor Coates.
There is no question on this, but as Chair of Strategy and Ops, I thought it might be helpful just to clarify that staff had consulted with me around the proposal to reduce the number of meetings. My attitude, understanding the workload of councillors, was that it was around quality, not quantity, that we have good meetings with full agendas and work through things and not just meetings for the sake of meetings. And I think the key part is that there is ability to add meetings in as and when required. So that will hopefully help us to get through more briefings and workshops and other matters that we have to tackle that you're all aware of, and when we need to bring other S&O meetings back in if the need requires. But they'll certainly, the staff check with me in terms of the items on the agenda, the size of the agenda, the importance of the matter and whether we carry it over to a future meeting, and that's all stuff that I'll look at next year just to ensure that we try and balance that workload. But I think it is a good point around just being mindful of briefings as well that may or may not occur on the same day, or workshops or whatever. So thank you for that, Councillor.
Councillor McCann.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, just one query. We have one council meeting here scheduled 3 days before election day, is that correct? Is council, not having had that experience, which I'm sure I'm looking forward to, is there a concern around bringing too many really important items to councillors 3 days before?
We would not.
Yeah, so
it is the most important items. It is for all of you, should you wish, to make a valedictory speech.
And you're not allowed to bring your banners.
So it's very important, I think. And I will note that, yeah, you should start now, as the councillor suggests. I didn't say that. Yeah, there is. There is. No substantial business comes forward during the shutdown period.
That was my question.
2 triennia ago, every elected member chose to say something, just in case, I suppose. Last term, from memory, no one did. And in both elections, we had 6 new members around the table. So you can take what you like from that.
On that note, Councillor Holliday.
I was going to ask around the length of meetings, but Councillor Coote's talking to quality, not quantity. Pretty much well answered that. I just wanted to acknowledge on point 8 with regards to our the statutory requirement to have 2 clear working days, and the fact that Mr Maxwell, you give us more than that was muchly appreciated with regards to being able to have more time to actually read through some quite large agendas at time. I actually thought it was 5 days, but having read that and looked at the rules, it is only 2, so I do appreciate the more time that we do get.
Sometimes we struggle with it, Councillor, but we try really, really hard, as you know, to stick to that for those reasons. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Buzzer.
Oh, my question was just exactly the same as Councillor McCann's around that meeting just a couple of days before election day. Sorry.
And was the answer adequate?
Yeah.
Councillor Elliott.
I'm just checking the fact that between the 3rd of May and the 9th of August, there's no meeting of TWOC, and has that been okay? Does this calendar already been approved by them? Because it seems to me like a rather long break between meetings.
The calendar has not been to Te Whakamininga. There was no chair of Te Whakamininga to consult on the calendar when we were preparing it to bring before you. There is now, as of this week, an interim chair following the first meeting of Te Whakamininga for I think about 6 months. So that is certainly something that we can take to them, and if need be, we can amend that fairly easily.
Right. Councillor Coates, you're going to move this?
I'm happy to move.
Seconder, Councillor McCann. Right of intro and a scintillating speech from you.
Look, having had Mr. Gott's presentation with his calendar, I just hope there is no red and orange bars added to that calendar,
really
noting COVID lockdown periods. So if it can stay as it is, that would be, if you could organise that, Janice, that would be awesome.
Oh, we'll absolutely do our best.
Can you put that down in the minutes? So recommendation 28 moved by Councillor Coates and seconded by Councillor McCann. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Now, 8.5 Representation Review 2021 Consideration of Submissions, page 46.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I bring this paper to you and will largely take it as read, noting that the purpose of this paper is for you to formally receive the submissions on the Representation Review initial proposal, which you have both heard in terms of submitters that wanted to be heard, and you've also received an analysis of the submission verbally, and that analysis is also attached to this paper for you to receive today. And we're also recommending that you note the process that you will be going through, or that you are currently going through, to deliberate on the submissions and to make your decisions around your final proposal. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Councillor Holbrook.
Yes, thank you. It's really good to have this analysis of all the submissions. I'm referring to paragraph 14 on page 47, where we must consider all submissions received and be able to demonstrate we've done so by providing reasons for the acceptance or rejection of submissions. And further down, we need to determine which submissions are accepted and the corresponding amendments to the initial proposal and the reasons for the amendments. Will that come to a council meeting?
So that will be dealt with in part this afternoon in your workshop. We are on a thematic, and in terms of the themes of the feedback that are included in the analysis, and also the quantitative results for the questions that you asked. So there will be a process around that this afternoon. But the final the council report related to the final proposal, so taking the direction that you give us today and then turning that into your report, that will be the formal mechanism for you accepting the feedback or not that is in the submissions. But it will be grouped at a thematic and question level rather than an individual submission by submission level.
So I guess that's my question. If we must consider all submissions received and which submissions are accepted and reasons for amendments, are we covering those obligations if we talk about this at a thematic level?
We've been taking advice on how to do this, and my understanding is that the process that I've just outlined will satisfy the requirements of the Act. But we can seek some more, we can, I guess, check that again and make sure that we're across that by the time we come back into this room at 1:30 today to work through the process. But having worked with Dale, I believe that what we are proposing is adequate, but we will double check that.
So if you don't take a generic approach, what work will that entail for all of us?
It will entail a council officer. I'm hesitating to answer that question without having taken some advice, but my first thought on that, and I will confirm this, is that we would need to provide a proposed response for you submission by submission if the thematic and quantitative kind of approach is not deemed to be appropriate. But as I say, the advice we've had to date is that what I've outlined is adequate.
Chief Executive.
Mr Mayor, through you, thank you. Can I just chip in and add? So usually what people are concerned about is that you come up with something that hasn't at all been presented to you through submissions. And as you've heard repeatedly, that would not be appropriate. You can't come up with a new idea yourself if it isn't referenced in a submission somewhere. So we're very clear that we'll be encouraging you not to do that, and I'm sure that nothing like that will come up. The flip side, what I have heard very clearly through any discussions that have been had on this to date is that any changes you wish to make to your proposal, you will need to be able to point back to where it is in response to a submission or submissions. And so staff's role will be to make sure that we help clarify there's where it links back, and that can happen either through the preparation of the report or subsequent to it.
Thank you. I'm just aware that this is quite a prescriptive and challengeable process, and I'm just making sure that we tick all the boxes.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, just a couple of questions. The word rejection or rejected is pretty harsh. Do we have to use that word when replying to submitters? Because while we might not have in the end, while we might not come up with the solution they propose, even those that have challenged us have been really useful in helping to develop our thinking. I'm just really, I just don't like that word rejected.
I don't believe that we'd need to use that word when replying to submitters directly. It is a word, I believe, that comes from the Act, and we probably will need to use it in the report that facilitates your decision. But no, I would certainly not favour using that language in any response to submitters.
Thank you.
Right. Mr Mansell.
Just for point of clarification, are you accepting that you're receiving the report, or you're accepting the information in the report or in the submissions? Because if you're accepting that you've received it, you can accept every one of them, and so you've covered your backsides. But I mean, you don't have to accept the premise of what they're saying. You just accept that they've submitted.
You receive.
So for the purposes of today's paper, it is recommended that the council receive the information. The conversation around accepting the feedback or not comes in relation to the response to submissions specifically. No, I believe that you will be required, that the council will be required to accept or reject the different pieces of feedback that they have received as part of this process. The piece that we will go away and provide and clarify and provide further information on before this afternoon is just to double check that can happen at a thematic and question by question, response to questions by questions level, not at an individual every 500 submission level, which I don't believe it does have to be at that level.
Right. No more questions. We are looking at recommendation 34, 35, 36. Receive and note. Somebody, Councillor Holbrook, moved. Councillor McCann, seconded it. Right of intro.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge the huge amount of work that's gone into this consultation process. Particularly, some of us had our doubts, and quite legitimately, that we could do a robust consultation process through the different alert levels. But I think the quantity of submissions we've got back, and also the quality of them, is proof that this has been a really, really successful submission process in terms of the submissions that we've received. And no matter what we decide on the basis of those submissions, we have so much rich information in there that's going to help us make sure we have the best representation possible for our district, no matter what form that takes. So I just want to acknowledge the staff. I also want to acknowledge, because we had a lot of submissions, almost at long-term plan kind of level by some council standards, how those submissions were presented to us in their different categories, so they were really easy to follow. And I just want to acknowledge everybody who made submissions too, and those individuals and organisations, some really well thought through and constructive submissions. So thanks to everybody who's been involved. Also, Empathy Design, what an outstanding job they've done.
Councillor Coates.
I just want to tautoko what Councillor Holborough has said. I recall one of the speakers had referred to another council receiving 10 submissions, and I think that we should be proud of the fact that what we went out with stimulated discussion within the community that provided us a richness of information through the 530 plus submissions that hopefully we all read through, and as some have already referred to, some really good ideas and thoughts that have come through that. It also gave us some insights into what little how some of the community know very little about what the job entails, and some know a lot more, and some of those gaps there that potentially we could fill. I think the comment there was around some civic education as well. So yeah, I certainly think the volume of submissions will be helpful for us moving forward in terms of making the decisions that we make, and also demonstrating to the Remuneration Authority that we gave it a good crack and did our job. So I'm happy to support it today.
Right, anybody else? Councillor McCann.
Very briefly, because the two councillors before me have spoken eloquently, and I think it's I think we have gone out to the community with an idea, and we were mandated and we needed to do that, or else we weren't doing our jobs. And what I would like to respond to some members of the community is that the councillors have not been predetermined. This is part of a process. So we've talked a lot today about communication, and I think it's really important that whether you're in a council or a community board, that we respect some of the processes that we have to work with and communicate correctly to the community that there is a process and decisions to be made, not that the council has predetermined certain outcomes. So I really want to thank staff for taking us on a very difficult journey, and acknowledge again publicly that it was this table that decided to put staff in that position and not accept their advice and have it as an independent process. But as the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Coates have both said, there was a lot of rich information which has really helped us as we've been through workshops, and will continue to help us as we work towards a decision. And none of that would have been available if we had just kicked it down the road and accepted that there were difficult decisions to be made and we wouldn't make them. So I am really proud of the way that we have behaved, and I just hope the community understand that there are processes that we go through and we don't predetermine the outcomes.
Councillor Buswell.
Thank you. I have to say that this process has been really, really tricky, and that is absolutely through no fault of our council organisation, but the fault of the formulas that we have to work with. They physically do not fit with the makeup of our area, and I know that council staff and others have sliced and diced this community all over the place to try and make it work, and it literally cannot work under the Local Government Commission guidelines, which is really, really difficult. This is something that we have to go out and do. We're mandated to do it every 6 years. There are many people in the community that see this as a waste of time and money, because there is no perfect fit for what the Local Government Commission want. So many of us have spent a lot of time thinking about how it could work in their boxes that they give us, but it just simply doesn't. So I think that we've been told we might get hit over the face with a wet bus ticket. So I think that might be how we resolve this. Not that we have any predetermined ideas of the result at all, but yeah, so it's been a really interesting and enlightening process, and I think the 500 odd submissions certainly show that we have a very active community in this space. And And the information that we've sourced from our community has been really valuable, and I understand that our organisation can use a lot of that information in different areas, which is really pleasing to see.
Just to add, even though I don't have a predetermined idea, I'm beginning to have a determined idea. Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, kia ora. I just tautoko what Councillor Buswell said and fellow elected members. I think, yeah, very, very pertinent comments, and would also like to just thank the people who made submissions and also people who rallied others to do the same, notably the community boards who actually went out and really tried to engage the community in getting them to just put their views on a bit of paper or respond to the survey. And so I think all of that work is really valuable, that people did in their weekends and did, you know, throughout the days, and yeah, really contributed to the richness of information that we have in front of us, as has been mentioned. Also the engagement from our iwi partners and sitting around the table for some of these discussions too, wanting to recognise that, and again thanks to the staff for their mahi on the consultation and for allowing a few of us councillors to work in alongside you to kind of, yeah, to offer up suggestions in different ways that we think that the consultation could reach into all corners of our community, and I think it really has stimulated kōrero and conversation, just as I think it's important for it to do. And one thing I would add too is that, and this was mentioned through some of the oral submissions, and I tried to, you know, pull out questions that were related to this, but we did hear from a lot of people who we often hear from. Similar demographic, obviously not everyone was the same demographic and there was diversity within that, but the challenge I think for us now is how we represent both of the voices that we've heard through these submissions, and obviously, you know, the final arrangement that comes to the council table, we want to ensure that we do that. But our challenge alongside that too is how we put our hand out to those people who might want to engage with the mahi of council and community boards, but don't currently feel like they have a mechanism which allows them to do that in a mana enhancing way. So there's that balance there too, which I just think we should, or I feel like I should acknowledge. And so, yeah, it's been awesome to kind of be privy to this process and to hear from members of our community and really passionately as well. And it's been awesome to see people really care about having their voice heard and care about taking action for our community and making Kāpiti a better place. It's awesome, yeah.
Councillor Holiday.
Wow, okay. I'll just echo everyone else's sentiments on a job well done in this space, and I just really wanted to comment that we've just had a decision come out around Three Waters, and the view that came back from our community was very much focused around the importance of localism. Yeah, I look forward to this afternoon, I think.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I generally agree with what everyone else has said around the council table, but I think by going through this process and getting the feedback that we have received makes the feedback even stronger for helping us move forward on making decisions on our representation. Thank you.
Right. Tanika, Randall or Compton?
They haven't, they've signalled their vote. They're not signalling to ask any questions.
Recommendation 34, 35, 36 moved by Councillor Holbrook, seconded by Councillor McCann. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Item number 9, confirmation of minutes. Any issues with the minutes of the 30th September 2021? No. I move that the minutes of the council meeting of 30th September 2021 be accepted as a true and accurate record. Can I have a seconder? I'm waiting. Councillor Hanford, thank you very much. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Item number 10, covering items not in the agenda, public speaking time. There's none. Now we move into public exclusion. I move that we go into public exclusion. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Buswell. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried. We are now in public exclusion.
Yeah, you can specify Mr. Mayor that it's dispense so that the unions don't need to, I guess, not a quick go to food.
Right. I